A stunt extra just hit the ground. Wrong. You can hear the crack from 50 feet away. Everyone freezes. The assistant director yells, "Cut." The production manager is already calculating how much this delay is costing. And Dean Martin, he's walking toward the broken body lying in the Arizona dust. But what he's about to do in the next 60 seconds won't just stop a multi-million-dollar production. It's going to make him an enemy of every studio in Hollywood. And John Wayne, standing in the shadows watching this unfold, will later say it was the bravest thing he'd ever seen. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't a story about a movie star playing hero. This is about the moment Dean Martin looked at the machine that made him rich and famous and said, "Not anymore. Let me take you back." July 1958. Old Tucson Studios, Arizona. The temperature is 112 degrees, the kind of heat that makes your lungs burn. Dean Martin, John Wayne, and director Howard Hawks are deep into production on Rio Bravo. This movie is going to become one of the greatest westerns ever made. But right now, on July 23rd, something is about to happen that almost kills the entire film. The movie business in 1958 was brutal, not the glamorous kind you see on screen, the real kind, where studios treated human beings like spare parts, extras, stunt performers, crew members, invisible, disposable. You got hurt. That was your problem. The cameras kept rolling. You either got back up or you got replaced. Simple as that. Dean Martin had watched it his whole career, seen people chewed up and spit out by the Hollywood machine. But he'd never been in a position to do anything about it. He was a singer, an entertainer, a guy who showed up, looked cool, said his lines, collected his check, and went home. That was the deal. That's what everyone expected from Dean Martin. Don't cause trouble. Don't ask questions. Just be the charming guy with the drink and the smile. But something about Rio Bravo was different. Maybe it was working with John Wayne, a man who commanded respect just by existing. Maybe it was the heat, the isolation, the intensity of shooting in the middle of nowhere. Or maybe Dean Martin had just reached a point where he couldn't stay silent anymore. Whatever it was, July 23rd was the day Dean Martin stopped being just an entertainer. The scene they're shooting is a bar fight. Classic Western stuff. Chairs breaking, bodies flying, the whole bit. They've hired about 30 stunt performers and extras to fill out the saloon. Most of them are local guys from Tucson working for $75 a day. Good money in 1958, if you survive the day to collect it. One of those extras is a 34-year-old former rodeo rider named Tommy Mitchell. Tommy's been doing stunt work for about 5 years, picking up whatever jobs he can find. He's got a wife, Sarah, and 2 little girls back in Tucson. He was thrilled to get hired on Rio Bravo, working with John Wayne and Dean Martin. That's the kind of credit that could change a stuntman's career. Tommy's job that day is simple. During the bar fight, he gets thrown through a breakaway window, hits the ground outside, rolls twice, stays down. Easy stuff for a guy who's been thrown off horses for a living. The breakaway window is made of sugar glass, designed to shatter safely on impact. Standard Hollywood trick, done 1,000 times on 1,000 different sets. But here's what Tommy Mitchell doesn't know. What nobody on that set knows. The construction crew made a mistake. That window frame that's supposed to be breakaway wood, it's actually reinforced with metal supports. Someone in the props department grabbed the wrong frame that morning. It looks identical to the breakaway version, but it's built to last, not to break. The assistant director calls action. The bar fight erupts. Bodies fly. Chairs shatter. Right on cue, 2 stuntmen grab Tommy Mitchell and hurl him toward that window. Tommy hits the glass at full speed. The sugar glass shatters perfectly, exactly like it's supposed to, but the window frame doesn't give. Instead of breaking away and letting Tommy sail through cleanly, that metal reinforced frame catches him mid-flight like a clothesline. The sound is sickening, a wet crack that echoes across the desert silence. Tommy's body twists in mid-air. He drops 12 feet straight down onto the hard-packed dirt outside the saloon set. He doesn't roll. He doesn't move. He just lies there, motionless, dust settling around him like a shroud. The assistant director yells, "Cut." For about 3 seconds, the entire set is silent. Then everyone starts moving at once. The stunt coordinator sprints toward Tommy. The on-set medic grabs his bag and runs. Crew members crowd around. And Dean Martin, still in full costume with stage blood on his shirt from the fight scene, pushes through the crowd to see what happened. Tommy Mitchell is conscious, Barely. His left arm is bent at an angle that arms aren't supposed to bend. Blood is pouring from a gash on his head. Worse, he's not moving his legs. The medic takes one look and says the words everyone fears. "We need an ambulance now. This is serious." The production manager, a man named Gerald Foster, appears out of nowhere. Foster is the studio's guy, the numbers man, the one who makes sure the film comes in on budget and on schedule. He takes one look at Tommy on the ground and says something that makes Dean Martin's blood run cold. "Get him off my set, put him in someone's car, and take him to the hospital, and somebody find out who grabbed the wrong window frame. They're fired. That's it. No concern for Tommy. No questions about whether he'll be okay. Just get him off my set like he's a piece of broken equipment." The medics start to argue. They say Tommy shouldn't be moved until the ambulance arrives. Foster cuts them off. "We're losing light. Every minute we're not shooting costs this studio $10,000. Get him out of here and reset the scene." Dean Martin is standing right there. He hears every word, and something inside him snaps. Not the explosive kind of snap, the quiet kind, the dangerous kind. He walks over to Foster. His face is calm, his voice is low. "What hospital are they taking him to?" Foster barely looks at him. "Tucson General, I guess." "Why? Who's paying for it?" Foster finally looks at Dean. "That's not our problem. He signed a waiver. These guys know the risks. It's part of the job." Dean takes a breath. So the studio's not covering his medical bills. The studio provides on-set medical care. Anything beyond that is his responsibility. That's standard. Now, if you don't mind, we need to reset this scene. Reset the scene without me. Foster's face goes red. "Excuse me. You heard me. I'm not shooting another frame until I know that man's medical bills are covered." The entire set goes quiet. Crew members stop moving. John Wayne, who'd been in his trailer, emerges and stands at the edge of the scene, watching. Howard Hawks, the director, puts down his script. Everyone senses something big is happening. Foster tries to laugh it off. "Dean, come on. Don't be dramatic. The guy signed a waiver. This is how it works." "Not anymore, it doesn't." Foster's smile disappears. "You have a contract. You can't just refuse to work." Dean Martin takes off his costume hat and hands it to a nearby crew member. "Watch me." Foster steps closer. His voice drops to a threatening whisper. "You walk off this set and you'll never work in this town again. Do you understand what I'm saying? Warner Brothers will bury you. You'll be finished." Dean doesn't flinch. "Then I guess I'm finished. But that man isn't going to go bankrupt because your construction crew screwed up." The silence on that set is absolute. In 1958, actors don't challenge studios like this. Studios have absolute power. If they want to destroy your career, they can. One phone call to every major studio in Hollywood, and you'll never see the inside of a sound stage again. Dean Martin knows this. Everyone knows this. But Dean Martin is standing his ground anyway. Foster plays his trump card. "You're holding up a production that employs 150 people. Every day we don't shoot. That's 150 people not getting paid. You really want that on your conscience?" Dean looks around at the crew. Electricians, camera operators, makeup artists, sound guys, all of them watching to see what happens. And then Dean says something that changes everything. "How many of you have been hurt on a set and had to pay your own medical bills?" For a moment, nobody moves. Then slowly, hands start going up. 1, then 3, then a dozen. More than half the crew raises their hands. Broken bones, concussions, burns from lights, falls from scaffolding. All of them paid out of their own pockets because the studio said it wasn't their problem. Dean turns back to Foster. "So it's not just Tommy. It's all of them. Every person on this set who's been chewed up and thrown away. You're telling me that's just how it works?" Foster's jaw tightens. "This is a business, Martin, not a charity." "Then let me make this simple for you. Either Warner Brothers pays every penny of Tommy Mitchell's medical bills, surgery, rehab, everything, or I walk, and I take this story with me. I'll tell every reporter in Los Angeles exactly why Rio Bravo shut down, how a man got crippled because your crew used the wrong window frame, and the studio refused to help him. The threat hangs in the air like smoke. In 1958, Hollywood studios control the narrative. They control the press. But Dean Martin threatening to talk to reporters, that's real. That's dangerous. That could turn into a scandal that would cost the studio millions in bad publicity." Foster's face goes from red to purple. You don't have that kind of power. That's when John Wayne steps forward. The Duke has been watching the whole thing in silence. Now he walks right up to Foster and stands next to Dean, not saying a word, just standing there. The message is clear. Whatever Dean does, I'm with him. Howard Hawks, the director, joins them. Then the cinematographer. Then the stunt coordinator. One by one, key members of the production walk over and stand with Dean Martin, not saying anything, just standing there. A silent wall of solidarity. Foster looks around at the faces staring back at him. He's outnumbered, outmaneuvered. If Dean walks, the movie is dead. If John Wayne walks with him, Warner Brothers loses everything they've invested. And if this turns into a public scandal about how the studio treats injured workers, the damage would be catastrophic. Foster pulls out a handkerchief and wipes his face. I need to make a call. He disappears into the production office. Dean Martin doesn't move. He just stands there, arms crossed, waiting. The crew doesn't reset the scene. Nobody moves. The entire production is frozen. Tens of thousands of dollars burning away with every minute that passes. But nobody cares. Something bigger than money is happening. 20 minutes later, Foster emerges from the office. His face is carefully neutral. Warner Brothers will cover Mr. Mitchell's medical expenses, all of them, and will be reviewing our insurance policies for the entire crew. Dean doesn't smile, doesn't celebrate. He just nods. I want that in writing today. You'll have it by end of business, and I want to know Tommy's condition before we shoot another frame. Foster hesitates, then nods. Fine. Dean turns to the crew. Anybody here want to keep working under these conditions? Speak up now, because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Nobody else gets hurt and left behind. Nobody speaks up. They don't need to. The answer is written on every face. Howard Hawks clears his throat. All right then, let's take the rest of the day. Give everyone a chance to cool down. We'll resume tomorrow morning. As the crew begins to disperse, John Wayne pulls Dean aside. That was the gutsiest thing I've ever seen. You know you just made yourself a target, right? The studios are going to remember this. Dean shrugs. Then they remember it. I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's happening to people. Wayne studies him for a moment, then extends his hand. You're all right, Martin. You're really all right. That night, Dean Martin goes to Tucson General Hospital. Tommy Mitchell is in surgery. His wife Sarah is in the waiting room, terrified, clutching a hospital bill estimate that would bankrupt their family. Dean sits down next to her. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dean Martin. I was there when your husband got hurt. Sarah looks up at him, her eyes red from crying. Is he going to be okay? The doctors are doing everything they can, but I need you to know something. Warner Brothers is paying for everything, every penny, surgery, rehab, lost wages, everything. You don't have to worry about the money. Sarah stares at him, not comprehending. What? How? Because what happened to your husband wasn't his fault, and it's not right that you should suffer for it. Sarah breaks down crying, not from fear this time, from relief. Dean stays with her until Tommy comes out of surgery. 3 hours sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair, drinking bad coffee, just being there, because nobody else from the production is. Tommy Mitchell survives. The surgery repairs most of the damage to his arm, though he never regains full mobility. His back heals. He can walk again, though with a limp. He never does stunt work again. But Warner Brothers pays his medical bills, all $18,000 of them, and 6 months later, they hire him as a stunt coordinator, a position where he can use his experience without risking his body. Rio Bravo resumes production the next day. Dean Martin is quieter than usual, but he's there. John Wayne watches him differently now, with respect, with something close to reverence. And the crew, they'd walk through fire for Dean Martin after that. Not because he's a star, because he stood up when it mattered. The studio does try to retaliate. Dean's next 3 film offers are mysteriously withdrawn. Projects he was supposed to be attached to suddenly go to other actors. The blacklist is real, but Dean Martin has something the studio hasn't counted on. He has John Wayne's loyalty. He has Howard Hawks telling everyone in Hollywood what really happened on that set. And he has a crew that spreads the word. Within 6 months, the story of what Dean Martin did on the Rio Bravo set becomes legend in Hollywood. Not in the press, the studios make sure of that, but among the people who actually make movies, the grips, the gaffers, the stunt performers, the extras. Dean Martin becomes something more than a star. He becomes a hero, In 1959, the Screen Actors Guild pushes through new insurance requirements for productions. Studios are required to carry comprehensive coverage for all performers, including extras and stunt workers. The change is directly influenced by what happened on Rio Bravo. Dean Martin never takes credit for it, but everyone knows. Tommy Mitchell keeps in touch with Dean for the rest of Dean's life. Every Christmas, Dean gets a card from Tommy and Sarah and their daughters. And every Christmas, Dean calls them, not for publicity, not for show, just because he cares. When Dean Martin dies in 1995, Tommy Mitchell is at the funeral. He's 71 years old by then, walking with a cane, his arm still slightly crooked from that day in the Arizona heat. A reporter asks him what Dean Martin meant to him. Tommy looks at the reporter and says, "Dean Martin saved my life. Not just that day on the set, my whole life. He taught me that you don't have to be powerless just because someone tells you you are. He showed me that standing up for what's right matters more than keeping your job." The reporter presses him, but he was a big star. It was easy for him to take that risk. Tommy shakes his head. "No, it wasn't easy. He risked everything that day. And he did it for me, a guy he didn't know, a guy who didn't matter to anyone except my family. That's not a big star move. That's a good man move. And Dean Martin was a good man." The story of Rio Bravo is usually told as a classic Western. John Wayne in his prime, Howard Hawks directing, Dean Martin showing he could act, not just sing. And all of that's true, but there's another story buried in that film. A story that didn't make it into the press kits or the promotional materials. A story about what happened when a man with power decided to use it for something other than himself. Dean Martin stopped a production on July 23, 1958. He risked his career, his reputation, his future. He stared down a studio executive and refused to back down. And he did it for a man he'd never met, a stunt extra named Tommy Mitchell, who hit the ground wrong and whose life would have been destroyed by medical bills. That's not just a good story. That's a blueprint for how to be human. That's a reminder that fame and fortune mean nothing if you don't use them to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Dean Martin wasn't a crusader. He wasn't a revolutionary. He was just a guy who saw something wrong and refused to pretend he didn't see it. Rio Bravo became one of the greatest westerns ever made, but the real heroism on that set happened off camera, in a moment when Dean Martin chose principle over profit, when he chose a stranger's welfare over his own career, when he stood up and said, "Not on my watch," and the crew that was there that day, they never forgot. They told their children, their grandchildren. The story spread through Hollywood like wildfire, not in the newspapers, not on television, but in the places where real people worked, the places where being decent mattered more than being famous. Dean Martin made a lot of movies. He sang a lot of songs. He made millions of people laugh and cry and feel something. But on July 23, 1958, in the brutal Arizona heat on a Western set that almost killed a man, Dean Martin did something more important than entertain anyone. He stood up, he spoke up, and he refused to let the machine grind up another human being. That's the Dean Martin story that should be told, not the cool guy with the martini glass, not the Rat Pack singer with the effortless charm, the man who stopped a movie set and said, "Fix this or I walk," the man who risked everything for a stranger, because that's not just courage, that's character.